Yo, what is going on, everybody? It's Brave Cat here once again with another Frontier Signals update. This one's coming a little bit late, just kind of getting back on my mojo here after a short break from things. And we still have the SDO feeds are still all completely down. And I really hope that comes up soon because these feeds have a larger timetable. So going back a few days, if we compare that here to what we see on the GOES 19 on the NOAA, this really only does seemingly like the last 24 hours. So I missed a plasma filament eruption yesterday that happened here, and Ben Davidson covered that in his morning video, as well as a couple other things that I want to get into. So that plasma filament release that happened around here, that is already being tracked on the Enlil prediction. So if we see that here, looks like it's pretty much going to miss us and, pretty much graze us, if anything at all. But again, this isn't like a perfect prediction. It could be, a little bit more than that. So, we could still expect either way more potential geomagnetic storm activity. Although there isn't really much in terms of coronal holes right now. We've pretty much gotten past those coronal mass ejections that were headed our way. But again, hitting a KP of 7 from arguably minor solar activity is pretty concerning. And, Ben made a really good correlation today between the weakening of the magnetic field and directly relating that to the KP indexes that we see from solar activity. So going back 10, 20 years, these space weather agencies were quite often overestimating solar storms and usually reporting that we might get something more severe than what actually happened. And then, especially in more recent years, we've seen the exact opposite, where they are quite often completely underestimating these geostorms. And, we see a lot more disturbances happening in the magnetic field than they would normally suspect. So you just combine that with everything else, the auroras seen at mid-latitudes, the North Pole going skyrocketing towards Siberia, etc. And, it's pretty clear what's going on. But of course, there's always got to be a lot of debate, a lot of denying, a lot of mainstream narrative, etc. And that being said, we do have a couple of really good papers that Ben mentioned in his morning video. So this first one here is pretty much debunking man-made climate change based off of CO2 models. And again, concluding that Earth's climate is still dominated by solar activity itself. And this is not the first or the last paper to cover that. And, stuff like this, I really want to get more of this on the website here in the Frontier Science article section. I mean, there's already so many more I have planned to add, but, I really need to dive into these papers and these websites as well because, a lot of these I do rely on Ben from a lot of the links he provides, a lot of the papers that he covers, because he dives into this stuff for a living. I mean, he breathes scientific papers. So if there's anyone that knows his stuff, it's him. But that being said, I want to kind of do my own digging a little bit and try to find some other relevant papers as well. So this other one that he covered is again related to the sun and basically climate anomalies when we get X-class flares. So that's a pretty good one as well. I'll have the links in the description, but I will pretty soon here have these on the website. Just kind of coming back from a little bit of a short break I needed. So I'll be getting right back to this stuff here shortly. So is there anything else here? Oh yeah, there was a pretty big far side flare that happened. Although it seemed to happen right on the other side of the departing limb. So pretty much the sunspots that were just facing us like a week ago seem to have flared off. And especially on this LASCO C2, it looks like it was a pretty decent coronal mass ejection here. Doesn't look to be a full halo. And, it's not going to be directed at Earth, so that's good. That being said, that pretty much covers it as far as I know for space weather. We still do have some enhanced aurora forecasts incoming for the next, night or two. And then taking a look at earthquakes here, it's been pretty quiet for seismic and volcanic activity. But I just noticed this popped up here. We have a pretty big tremor swarm going up into the 4 range over here near Iceland. So it's happening right at the bottom corner of the island, right into the water. Let's see. So there's also a couple more deep events here. Hold on, I think I need to restart this program. So over here up in Alaska, we had yet another couple of deep earthquake events here. So this is now like multiple days in a row where we've had deep events up here in Alaska. Starting to become pretty anomalous over here, and I'm really curious to see what actually happens resulting from this. Other than that, we haven't really had a whole lot going on. Even after those 3 6s that hit yesterday, doesn't look like much else has really happened since then. And going across the board here, all the way into Europe, things are still looking relatively quiet here. We got a couple 3s peppering into the kind of central to south side, and that's pretty much about it, really. A few more quakes stacking up here in Greece, so that hasn't really slowed down too much. But yeah, it's looking pretty calm, at least for today. Take things over here on volcano discovery. We still have the volcano in France, still got Sangay, Fuego, and some of these don't really have much information being reported out of them at the moment. And then I guess one last thing here, looking at the tremor map, we now have 492 events that have happened. So this is 22nd going into the 23rd. We have a pretty large spike in the slow slip events coming from the Pacific Seismic Network, the Pacific Northwest Seismic Network. And so, I mean, when we actually see stuff going on here, it really is pretty good an indication of what is going on the West Coast. So we have all these tremor swarms happening every single day now, especially the ones here in Texas were not really, this wasn't really going on that much, before this year, really, as much as it is now, at least. And again, we still have a lot of peppered activity going on through Nevada and Utah, even a 2.8 here in Colorado. So something to keep an eye on. This stuff is not slowing down with this entire subduction zone. And, again, it's only really a matter of time before something happens over here. And it seems like there's too many people trying to predict when that'll happen. So I think even these past couple days, the 21st and the 22nd, people were saying that there was going to be a 7.0 striking the West Coast, and clearly that has not happened. So, even though there's a lot of different theories and factors going into potential earthquake forecasting, nobody has really gotten it perfectly. And, I don't know if anyone will unless we just had access to every single data point possible. Then, in terms of electromagnetically and just every single line of evidence you could possibly imagine. Maybe if we could have all those in front of us at once without anything being skewed or underreported, maybe we could make some really accurate stuff happen. But until that happens, I don't know, I feel like the seismic world is kind of being gatekept right now. We don't exactly know what is going on, and there's just so many different aspects to it that all we can do is really guess. So that being said, I think that'll wrap it up for today's video. So I hope you all enjoyed, got something out of it. Please like and subscribe for more. Share this video if you dare, and I'll catch you all in the next.